In this Star Wars Outlaws news update video, I will be sharing with you some brand new details about the game, as well as breaking down some brand new gameplay, which was also released. Before we do take a look at all of these details though, make sure you do subscribe to this channel so you won't miss any future Star Wars Outlaws news updates. So the first section of this video is going to be dedicated to breaking down all of the new gameplay clips we received at San Diego Comic-Con. Following that, I'll be going over some additional information the developers shared about the game, including some really interesting stuff regarding what enemies we'll be facing in the Empire. Then we also have some concept art to cap it all off. But now let's take a look at the new gameplay footage. So this first clip is set inside Junda's Hope Cantina, and as you can see, it looks fantastic, doesn't it? Just what you want to see in an open world Star Wars game. What I really like is how the rug in this cantina is made out of the skin and fur of the animals that we see in various other clips that we've gotten for this game. You've seen them around, they're quite big, and yeah, one of them has been skinned and used as decoration. Another thing I really like from this gameplay clip is the cleaner droid, or a security droid, something like that, and it's just roaming around the floor. It's so cool. There are several NPCs in this shot, and they are from a variety of races, which is nice. The neon signs that are above the bar area show the different items that you can order from this bar, including their credit cost. One of the items that I could make out translating the Urabash is Fompa bread. There is also mentions of stew and noodles. And then on this screen, it's on about a champion that appears to be riding a Favia. This is what we see in The Last Jedi. This next shot is just a quick one, and it shows those animals that I mentioned earlier where they've been skinned for the rug in the cantina. Here is a look at the cantina from outside. This is pretty cool to see. And what I do like is that one of those animals is actually parked up and an NPC is tending to it, and I believe they're probably going to be used as transport by some of the NPCs. Not everyone can afford a swoop or speeder bike. This short shot does show off some rocks and other parts of Tashara, including an animal that's smaller than the other ones we've previously seen, and what's interesting about it is that it has a bone on its head. It reminds me of Cubone from Pokemon. Now we can take a look at a different location. This time we are on the streets of Morugana, the city inside of a massive rock on Tashara. So this is the seedy streets that we can see inside of this rock city. There are pikes around in this area. There is one of those large animals locked in the cage behind the pike there. Let's go back to Junta's Hope's cantina, and as you can see, this is from a different perspective. It's a little bit closer and from a different side, and we get to see an R4 unit droid in the foreground, and then there is also a small animal without the bone on his head there, and again, more NPCs, Rhodians and other alien species. This is some sort of outpost, just a different building further out from Junta's Hope, and I have to say, at first glance you think, oh, okay, it's probably just going to be an empty location that we may be able to discover, but no, if you look closely, there are various NPCs around it. There are like 4 or 5, and they are so small in comparison to the actual building, which just shows the scale of this area. Here is a further out view of Junta's Hope, and we get to see the Trailblazer to the left on its landing pad, and then you can also see some of the smoke and whatnot in the distance. Here is a shot of a plane, so yeah, it's going to be quite spaced out. Some parts of Tashara, you'll need your speeder to navigate these areas because they're going to be long stretches, and there are multiple animals in this area as well, so that's good to see. We also get a couple of shots of the terrain, so there's like this crystalline look to it, some really detailed vegetation. Just look at all of these plants and the grass on the floor, the sand. It's a real work of art. Here is yet another different building with more NPCs around it, and it's just pretty cool that pretty much every building is going to have NPCs in and around it. There are various Trandoshans in these shots, which is pretty interesting. We can see a landing pad in the distance, and then there is this new space shot. It shows quite a lot of detail in the debris above Tashara. And now for a slightly different type of breakdown. So Ubisoft brought me out to San Diego Comic-Con, if you didn't know, and they had this booth where you could sit on K's speeder and do a quick video and such, and behind the speeder was some gameplay footage of the game, of a speeder, and it was just a camera following the speeder, so it looked like you was actually on the speeder when you took a video. And before I got on the speeder, I was analysing this like 15 seconds of looping video to see what I could see in the background. Was there anything to discover? And there was more than you'd expect, to be honest. And if you just ignore me in this video where I'm riding K's speeder, you can see a couple of things. So there is Junta's Hope, the animals, and lots of vegetation, but what I really like is the great draw distances in this game. You can see so far into the distance, can't you? That's where you're going to be able to go. You're going to be able to travel from here to there. And I think the most interesting part of this video clip is that you see an Imperial shuttle flying, but then it lands near Junta's Hope. That was like the first thing I spotted. I was like, that's an Imperial shuttle, and then it lands. So you're going to be able to see Imperial Starcraft just flying around and land, maybe not just Imperials, maybe other factions as well, as you are just going through this open world. So it feels like a truly living world, which is great. Now for this off-screen footage that I recorded at the Comic-Con panel, and I believe this is probably going to be inside of the city streets of Muragana City. We can see some stormtroopers looking around, lots of NPCs, a bunch of stalls for food. Moving on to some brand new details about the game, and this is coming from the various interviews they conducted at San Diego Comic-Con for the game. I already shared what answers I got with information on customization and such in my previous video, so please do go check that out if you haven't already. But the other outlets got some really interesting stuff as well. So PlayStation Access had a really great video, and they got something that was very interesting to me. So we already knew that as your wanted level increases, the various enemies you'll get will differ. They'll get stronger and stronger to hunt you down. But Julian, the creative director, actually confirms that Death Troopers will be one of the units that will come after you at some point. Whenever you've reached a certain level on the wanted system for the Empire, you will have Death Troopers coming after you, which is crazy. Let's now turn our attention to some interesting details coming from the panel itself that happened at Comic-Con, which I was in attendance for, thanks to Ubisoft. I did tweet out all of this information myself, but I thought I'd put it in a video anyway because not everyone follows me on Twitter. So something that I really liked to hear about was that Lucasfilm has been wanting an open world Star Wars game for a long time, and they felt it was perfect for Massive to undertake this task because they created The Division and Division 2. It was pitched just before the pandemic began, and they quickly got to work on it. Just 2 weeks ago, mocap was being recorded for the game, which featured a certain character that speaks Huttese. Obviously Jabba. Jay Rincon, who plays ND5, was cast early on, whereas Humbly Gonzalez, who plays K, was not as early, but as soon as they were put together, both actors, to do a test of how they get on, it was perfect, and it made their minds up for Humbly to get the part as K. We also got a couple of shots that weren't released publicly, but this is one of them, K in an underworld street. Nix is also able to claw out eyes. Yes, that's right, he is actually able to literally gouge the eyes out of enemies. Massive say that they really wanted a veteran of the Clone Wars to be a companion in Star Wars Outlaws specifically, and even though ND5 is one of few words, he does prod K quite a bit and is very fun to write for. Virtual tourism is something that they brought up, and it's something that they've been working on to put in this game. So they said that you'd be able to travel from the moisture farms to Mos Eisley if you want to do that in real time. You just jump on your speeder or walk it. It's up to you. You can venture that far of distance. We'll get to the concept art later on in this video, but it really does show what they are aiming for. We also got our look at the Ashiga clan, which is a brand new syndicate, and they are very good at detecting people sneaking around. They have heightened senses and are vicious compared to the other syndicates that you will come up against. There were also some new pieces of artwork for the Trailblazer, and they discussed how K's ship, the Trailblazer, is her home. You can walk around it, you can bug ND5 about his jacket, there are hidden secrets inside of the Trailblazer. It's a Republic-era ship, so there will be some things related to that era inside the ship, and they just said there is a lot of fun things to find. What I will say is that I get the feeling this ship is going to be like the Mantis in Fallen Order and Survivor, but a bit bigger and better because there appears to be a bit more space. With the Stinger Mantis, you just can walk in one direction pretty much. It's pretty straight, whereas the Trailblazer is wider and probably offers a little bit more interactivity, but we'll see. We got a look at Kay on her speeder in this artwork, and you're able to pull off some cool tricks on the speeder bike, according to Massive. Now, towards the end of the panel, they shared two really interesting pieces of information. So, when asked about surprises, the developers said, there are a couple I don't want to spoil. There is a particular predator on Tashara that is mind-blowingly cool. So if you have a fear of frogs, this might not be the game for you. Now, what other frog creature have we seen in Star Wars recently that's become a bit of a meme? Ogdo Bogdo, right? So perhaps they've put this same species into Outlaws as well? That would be very cool. Apparently it's very rare, so the next thing is that they said food is incredibly important to Star Wars, and if you enjoy food and discovering alien concoctions, this is going to be an exciting experience for you. So it does sound like you're able to go and buy food and drink. This is something that was actually cut from Jedi Survivor. I found it in the files and stuff like that. I made a video on all of the details regarding that feature, so do go check that out after you've seen this video, but I'm glad to see what appears to be a food and drink feature in Star Wars Outlaws. In an interview following Comic-Con with IGN, the developers say that they've worked closely with Ubisoft teams that have done very arcade flights and combat simulation games in the past. Their main focus was to make this as accessible as possible, because movement in a whole full-on 360-degree environment is quite a challenge. So it's about bringing the pace down and making every combat feel very intimate and explosive for the centre. There's a chase cam where you can control and click it down so you're going to chase the enemy automatically. It's just about shooting precision. Movement is much easier for you to be able to do to approach this, and you have small-scale battles as well as very large-scale. Speaking of space combat, the Trailblazer and the speeder bike has around the same amount of personalisation options. Inside the Trailblazer, there's mysteries within the ship in terms of its history and things like that. We also got some more details on the brand new crime syndicate. So it's called the Ashiga clan, and they're based on Kijimi, the planet that we see in The Rise of Skywalker. They are of the Mileto species that lives, and they are serving a hive. They are very different to the other syndicates that we see in the game, and it's actually based on a character design for a character that we saw in The Force Awakens called Sarko Plank, just a background character. IGN also asked, did you take any inspiration from Star Wars 1313? And the developers said no, they just didn't. They just wanted to make their own Star Wars game, and yeah, as I mentioned in my video, they did look at other games that have come out, but they didn't take anything from Star Wars 1313. Another question I've seen asked is this game going to be too big? Is it going to be an unfinishable 100 to 300 hour RPG like Assassin's Creed's recent entries? Well, they said it's definitely not going to be a 200 hour epic unfinishable RPG. It's very focused, and they want to take people on a ride that's very manageable, which is good to hear. Somewhat related, they aren't currently looking at multiple endings for this game, so that was an answer in the video with my friend Star Wars Explained, so go check out that full interview using the link down below in the description. It does confirm there aren't multiple endings, at least at this moment in time. Let's now take a look and break down the details of this awesome concept art, because there are some really interesting details that we can take away from, even though it's just concept art. So this shows the streets of Tashara, and it looks very interesting. I love the vibe. What I like is how the concept art pretty much lines up with the gameplay that we've seen so far. Then we have this shot of Kay and Nix on Tatooine, firing back, looking pretty awesome. Then we have Jabba meeting Kay, which could be for the first time or maybe the last. And we also have Salacious B. Crumb and other people inside Jabba's palace looking at the business going down. Continuing with the theme of Jabba's palace, we have this gorgeous piece of concept art at sunset showing Kay walking towards Jabba's palace. It really shows off the scale of this area. Again, it's just concept art, but it shows what they are going for. They're on a cliff far out from the palace, and it suggests that you're able to just walk along here however you like and get to the palace this way. The garage door is also open, and the sail barge is not inside. Here is a different view of the palace, so you can see it in the distance, but Kay is riding on her speeder, and there are a couple of settlements, there are a couple of moisture farms in the distance as well, so this seems to indicate that, just like on Tashara, you'll be able to travel to, say, something like Mos Eisley or Jabba's Palace, and along the way you'll find various buildings with just NPCs around, which definitely makes this feel like it's going to be somewhat more realistic than other games we've come across. They also show Banthas as well, and I'd imagine Tusken Raiders aren't too far behind. I also really like this shot of Tatooine as well. It's in what appears to be a cave section, like a quarry. There is a sandcrawler that seems to be broken, and there is also a shaft as well. Looks really, really cool. In this screenshot of the behind the scenes video, we actually see a skiff, which does suggest that Jabba may be sending out his henchmen on skiffs to hunt us down. This piece of concept art once again shows even more scale of Tatooine. Kay and Nix are just on this rock side, and there are Banthas moving towards a building. This could be Beggar's Canyon for all we know, or something very similar. There is this cool shot of Kay and Nix on the speeder looking at Murugana City. Then we have concept art from Akiva at a different location, and we have scout troopers on speeder bikes, Kay with Nix, Kowakian monkey lizard sitting on cargo boxes, Kay's speeder, and the temple and trees remind me a bit of Yavin 4, but there is way more tropical fauna. This is a really cool shot of an ice cave, so you have the icicles and whatnot. It's very different to what we'd see on Hoth, for example. If you've played Battlefront, you'll know those ice caves, but this does appear to be more like a rock cave with some icicles happening. It definitely looks like ice anyway. It's got that sort of look, although maybe it isn't. Maybe it's a different type of rock. We also get to see Kay overlooking the town on Kijimi. Again, shows a huge sense of scale. This is what they're aiming for with this game, even though it's just concept art. More close to Kay is a couple of NPCs and some buildings. This is reiterated in the actual gameplay footage we've seen of, say, Tashara, where there'll be a building before we get to the big section, and there'll be NPCs in that area. So, yeah, definitely seems like Kijimi will also be much bigger than you'd probably think. Now for the last thing that I really wanted to talk about, because I haven't seen anyone else talk about it. So the artist behind the actual cover art for the game shared this concept sketch, the original sketch for the cover art, which is so cool to see. Before the game has even come out, we've got some artists showing off their work for the game. So you can see some differences. Overall, it's pretty much what we got in the final cover art, but there are some differences. For example, you can see Kay having a holocron stuffed in her belt, and her bag has Beskar ingots from the Mandalorian, as well as credits and Mandalorian currency, stuff like that. Overall, it's very similar, right? But still, it's very nice to see the differences. For example, Kay's face is a bit different. They probably haven't got humbly cast at this point, or the artist didn't know specifically. MD is carrying a weapon rather than just having one holstered, and there is also a different ship in the background as opposed to the Imperial Star Destroyer. I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything I've talked about in this video, so please do let me know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, please do drop a like, subscribe so you don't miss any future Star Wars Outlaws videos, and if you did miss any of my previous videos, click on the playlist on screen right now, and I shall see you in my next video. Goodbye.